Our guest today founded Cornerstone for Health Chiropractic. She also serves on staff at the Cancer Treatment Centers of America, and she's the author of this book. Dr. Shannon knows the 12-step for wealthy people.
Wealthy people.
Not wealthy, but a different kind of wealthy. How to make healthy your habit. And your last name, we're just going to call you Supermom.
Okay, that'll work for me. That'll work for me.
Subramanian, is that right?
Very close.
Very close.
Very close. Subramanian.
Okay, thanks so much for being on. The 12 steps for wealthy people. Obviously, you're a doctor. What kind of inspired you to take on this project and write this book?
Years ago, I actually attended a seminar with a friend of mine who said, you have to hear this woman speak. She has the greatest story. It's the best story. And so I thought, okay, I'll go along. And when I got there, this young woman got up on stage and said, you know, I found out I was at an NA meeting. I didn't know that going in. And she stood up and she said, my drug problem started when I was a little girl. Every time I had a sniffle, sneeze, cough, whatever, my parents were sticking drugs in my mouth. And that really resonated with my heart because I'm on a passion to teach people how to just say no, K-N-O-W, to drugs. And so as I learned more about the 12-step program, I started thinking, you know, even though I don't have a drug or alcohol problem, is there a 12-step program for people that are healthy to keep them that way?
Yeah.
And so that's kind of how it all started. And one day I was just wondering, I wonder what it would look like to be my best. And I wonder what it would look like for all of us to be our best, and not to try to be better than, but just to be our best. What would that look like? And
so would you say a lot of the things in here were just things that you learned over time from your own experience then?
Yes, absolutely. But also, you know, I think the inspiration comes from God, totally. He woke me up in the middle of the night after I had been kind of revelating about this. And he woke me up in the middle of the night, took me out to the couch. I grabbed my Bible. I go back to Genesis when everything was perfect. When we were walking with God, getting our exercise, eating, you know, fresh fruits and vegetables. And he just showed me a lot of things, and I began to write, and I wrote all night, and it was the beginning of writing the 12 steps.
Now, you're a chiropractor.
I am.
And a lot of this book has to do with things like exercise and nutrition. So at what point did you kind of really start to focus on some of these other things other than, you know, cracking backs?
Well, great question. It cracks me up. Actually, you know, chiropractic is really about health. A lot of times people think it's about back pain or neck pain, but it's really about people being their best. There's a chapter in the book called, you know, being your best from above, down, inside, and out. And that's based on the chiropractic principle that we were born with an innate God-given wisdom to be healthy and to self-heal, as long as nothing interferes with that. So it's just eating well and exercise are just a part of that. Someone once told me, they said, eating well and exercise are not a guarantee for great health. They're an expression of the great health that's already within us.
Well, you have here how to make healthy your habit. Now, I've been told that if you do something 21 times, it'll become a habit. Now, how can people make this a lifestyle? I just lost 25 pounds. Stephan, I think, has lost about 40-something pounds. But I want to keep it off. That was about, I've had it off now for about 4 months.
Good for you.
Thank you so much. But I want it to be a lifestyle, to become that habit, to be healthy. So how can other people do the same thing?
That's a great question as well. It's really about knowing why we do things, and more importantly, understanding why we sometimes do not do things. You know, a lot of times people say, I want to eat well, I want to exercise, I want to be healthy. And they have a lot of reasons for being that way and doing that, but they don't ever look at the reasons they have internally not to. And so these 12 steps go back and really address foundational things like exposing yourself, facing your fears, knowing what it is that you hope for, and not being afraid to get our hopes up and to have a positive expectation. So going back to those reasons why we want to be healthy or we want to be fit, a lot of times people think, I just want to be a size whatever and get into this swimming suit, or I want to look good for this wedding. Instead, just saying, you know what, I've got an amazing purpose. God put me on this planet for a reason. What is that reason? And in order to live my God-given destiny, I need to be my best. So when we start focusing on being our best, it comes down to making, you know, small decisions that have a gigantic impact on our life overall.
Have you found it difficult at times to educate people? We were kind of talking about this a little bit in the green room beforehand, that some people may think, well, I want to eat healthier, so maybe they'll try something on the lower calorie menu at McDonald's. We were actually talking about this a little bit on yesterday's program, the hyper processed foods that, you know, people can actually save money by eating healthier food, but do you find it sometimes difficult to explain to people what actually eating healthy means? That it's not just get some apples with your burger, it's, you know, cut that out altogether.
Exactly. You know, I always tell people it's important to know that we eat to live, we don't live to eat. And so often people put their whole life around food and either, you know, like you said, want to eat the low-cal stuff because they think it's healthier, but really it's about eating whole, unprocessed, preferably organic food. You know, God created the body. He created the food to feed the body, so plenty of fruits and vegetables because they're what feed us, they're what give us the energy to do those things that we desire to do.
And you actually have a whole bunch of foods that you list here in the back of the book, and since we're talking about food, let's go ahead and go with that. What are some good foods that we should be eating? Obviously, you know, fruit, vegetables, this, that, and the other. And sometimes me and my sister have gotten into an argument where, like, she says, you got to eat some red meat or chicken sometime because you're just not getting the protein if all you're eating is tomatoes and cucumbers. What should people be eating?
Well, you know, a good variety, first of all, the green stuff for sure. I mean, the best way to go green is to be the best you that you can be. And so if we're going to have a healthy planet, we need to make sure that we're healthy. So lots of green, of course, but then plenty of, you know, grains, a lot of grains. So often we don't get the beans and the grains and all of that. We get a lot of processed flour, but we don't actually get the whole grains that we need. We can get a lot of protein from whole grains. We can also get a lot of calcium from dark green leafy vegetables. A woman on the plane asked me, she said, yeah, but what about milk? And I said, yeah, but you know what? A cow eats grass. They don't eat other meat to get their protein or to get their calcium. So we've just been programmed. It's really about the program we've had from the time we're little, that you have to drink milk to have your calcium and you have to eat animal products to get your protein, but that's not necessarily the truth, the whole truth.
Well, Dr. Shannon, two-part question.
Yes.
Have you ever had a weight problem?
You know, I'm so glad you asked me that.
Okay.
I have been thin my whole life, but I went through a time in my life where I went through a divorce and I had a real just personal hardship, and you know, as far as just on a heart level, just heartache. And I gained weight. I gained 15 pounds in a week, and so and so that was the first time in my life where I remember thinking like, oh my gosh, this is what it feels like to be overweight, you know, because I was definitely over my natural weight. And so, yes, I have experienced that.
Okay, and part two is, does thin really mean healthy all the time?
Valerie, it does not. There are so many people that are thin that, like we talked about in the green room, about they're missing the minerals, they're missing the nutrients that they need for their body to really be healthy and to restore and be strong. So thin does not necessarily equate to healthy. And in the book, I talk a lot about you know, having a healthy relationship with food. I know a lot of people that are very fit, they're very active, but they're controlled by their food. If they, you know, eat something that maybe isn't the healthiest food, they beat themselves up, they feel guilty, they feel ashamed. And it's really like, if you're gonna eat some ice cream or some chocolate, just eat it, enjoy it. Just don't buy it and bring it into your house and have it there, but just have it and you know, don't be controlled by it.
Well, there's 12 steps. We want to get to all 12, but we're going to take a break in just a moment. We'll be back with Dr. Shannon.
Thank you.